So as Justin, I've been in the moving process for, I don't know. It's so it's not just the moving process, it's the preparing, finding a place,
Hmm.
finding the RV, finding a place, coordinating everything, doing the move, and now I'm finally getting to a point where I'm starting to feel like I'm settling a little bit. A lot has been eliminated from my life in order to accomplish this and kind of do this. So, what I am recognizing is that I have been in complete task mode
Yeah.
for a couple of months, 4 months. The task mode has caused me to disconnect from my feelings, and unless they become extreme and
Hmm.
overwhelming. And then, so my question is, when a person is in task mode to the degree that I have been, like fully, where am I on the polyvagal ladder? I'm going to take a guess, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
Yeah, in general. So if I mean, I've moved. I remember moving numerous times. My wife and I would move at least once a year for years, and that
Mm,
was in college and before settling down here in Stockton. But we had bounced around, not just like home to home, but like city to city for years, and it was never feeling quite settled, never having our own place that felt like home. And even now, we haven't fully decorated the house, so it still feels like we're kind of living in someone else's house in some ways, you know. But anyhow, so as far as like moving goes and not really settling, I don't think I would call it like we're in flight fight. I think I would say that we're getting to those mobilized states, but hopefully while safe. So hopefully we feel that flight fight kind of stuff. So we feel the energy, but we're motivated, we're going the right direction. And so I wouldn't call that playfulness either. I guess there could be elements of it. Just in general, though, yeah, you're kind of like taxing the system. You're always on. But
hmm
as long as you're accessing your safety state, it's not like you're actually running away or fighting. You know what I mean?
hmm
So I would say that system's probably more on. Those are my thoughts. Those are my immediate
Okay.
thoughts.
Okay. So, so my thoughts were that's interesting because now I'm kind of like
Hmm.
combining it with what my thoughts were
Okay.
because of kind of taking my feelings and putting them aside. I don't have time for you right now. Like again, unless
Hmm.
it's extreme, unless I'm in complete overwhelm, which I had been a couple of times. There's an element of shutdown for me. So I'm wondering if it fits into one of those combination kind of states that you talk about.
Hmm.
Um, my concern of this is coming out of this fight flight, yes, shutdown combination,
But
coming
yeah,
out of it. I'm trying to pay attention to like where I am on the ladder, so that I don't tank.
I got you. Yeah. So I mean, what you're describing is a potentially like a mixed state. So
Yeah.
and Jen, if you want to chime in, please do so. But if you have any thoughts you want to share. But yeah, if we have high flight fight along with this immobility, that's a mixed state. That's what I had interviewed Porges, and that's what he had said to me was I asked like, well, what happens if you immobilize while highly charged up? And he says, well, that's really freeze, and freeze is different than shutdown. So freeze is a mixed state, as best I understand it, as I've been teaching it, and from what I see in my clients and whatnot, is it seems like freeze is a unique thing. Um, so
Mm.
immobility doesn't mean necessarily that we're forced to immobilize it. Obviously, it can, but immobility can also be like a perceived, um, like nothing's going to get better, just sort of generalized, I think. And it kind of sucks the energy out of you. You know, when you try and you fight so hard, and at some point you just kind of like, I work with teenagers who, with their parents come from these very dysfunctional homes that don't have co-regulation, don't have healthy relationships. And as kids, like, you're born to connect, and you will, not consciously, but you'll biologically just continually keep trying to connect. And the more time goes on, it kind of just wears the system down. And so I work with teenagers now who are at that point where they can consciously, cognitively say, like, I'm giving up, but really their biology is kind of like, I can't, it's not going to happen. And it's not this healthy boundaries moving on kind of thing. It's more of this just collapsed shutdown kind of giving up. And so it's not a conscious thing. It's like, after a certain amount of time, whatever that is for that person, we do sort of go into this immobilized energy where we just sort of like, like we just collapse. And so we could have that along with, we could have a general flavor of that along with a general flavor of flight fight as well. And so maybe day to day, and this could maybe be someone's job as well. Maybe day to day we do have, or maybe during a certain experience, there is this high intensity need, like moving, but also it's extremely, maybe we lose hope along the way or something like that. And so I could see there being an element of shutdown in there. So we have this sort of like tense energy stuck inside of us, but we're sort of immobilized and paralyzed with it kind of in there. So I can see that being like a mixed state. You might hear kids screaming in the background. That's my son playing with my wife.
Yeah.
It's just heads up.
You know how I feel about that,
I
right?
do. I know. Yeah. So
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. I mean, there were multiple times where I would say, what the hell have I done? Because where I was like very contained, inexpensive. Like, I mean, like, I have increased my my housing expenses by several $100s a month. You know, it was very contained. It was very safe.
Yeah.
And yet I was feeling squeezed out. And so there's that, you know, I feel like I'm up and down and up and down on a ladder. And what have I done? Yet I'm still moving forward.
Yeah, I got you. Jen, you want to jump in? Any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, just the way you were describing it, I was thinking of, because I talk about that a lot, but I think a lot of people live this way, like just sympathetic shutdown, like this, right? You're in sympathetic 8 hours a day, you come home and you shut down, and then, right? And then, but eventually, usually that kind of, we end up with some issues over time. So I was just thinking, like, well, what if you like did something with that energy outside of just tasks of moving and decorating and unpacking and all that stuff, like just with the energy to mobilize towards safety. So I have a bit of a tendency to you know, enjoy mobilization strategies over like stillness type strategies. So, but it seems like that would be a helpful thing to do. Like truly at the end, when you're done, whatever you're going to do for the day, like dancing for 5 minutes or doing some jumping jacks, like really just like getting that energy, that sympathetic energy out, so that maybe you shift up instead of shifting down as like an automatic reaction, an automatic like collapse reaction to go into that like energy conservation mode, and instead like real rest, right? Real restoration in a ventral vagal state. That makes sense.
Jenna, are you a therapist?
Yes.
I see those documents on her wall and I hear it.
That's interesting though, Jenna. I'm glad that you brought that up. That's interesting that I tend to lean toward like stillness as a way to, but that's just for my system, you know?
Right.
And, but yeah, you're right. Like I know dance and singing and all that stuff can be helpful for people, right? But it's like, I know for my system, I gravitate toward like, let me just like stop and let me just be still and let my energy gather back inside. But that probably says a lot more about kind of where we're at in the ladder, what works best for us and whatnot, right? Do you, with your work with your clients, do you see like sometimes stillness kind of fits, sometimes mobilization just kind of fits?
You know, so I'm a trauma therapist. So like my primary modalities are EMDR and internal family systems. So usually people come to me with quite a bit of trauma, like complex trauma. And then I work with Indigenous folks and like residential school survivors. So I actually, and I don't know, it's hard to say. I'm like, am I just like, is it me leaning towards it? Because I'm definitely a sympathetic person. Like that's where, if I'm going to get into a defensive state, it's going to be sympathetic. And just my history, there's a lot of like immobilization type traumas. So stillness can be very activating for me if I don't kind of do some movement first. So I'm always like, am I leaning toward this because it's mine?
Right.
Or like, but I also find in my clients that they just find mobilizing strategies, at least in the beginning of doing nervous system work, tends to be a lot more accessible, right? So the idea of like slowing down your breath and just like long exhales for 5 minutes is just like, can't do it.
That's
right?
hard.
But
It's hard.
They'd rather do something like Wim Hof, actually, if we're going to do breath work, like do something quick to like discharge that energy and then they feel better. So I don't know. That's what I find just with myself and my clients, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if we could put a poll out somewhere and see like what do people gravitate towards, you know?
Yeah, I think for me, since I gravitate towards stillness, my home away from home is easily shut down, and I find a lot of comfort in being alone and being still, and that's very much a shutdown thing. And so I think I personally just kind of gravitate that way. I think I can meet my clients in the moment with like more energized, and I kind of feel where they're at. But yeah, I think my inclination is personally just more that way. Yeah. But I think it's an interesting discussion. All right, so Sandra, when it comes to so you said like moving and whatnot and having like life changes. I know for us in our home right now, we have a house that is not level, and we have to bring out this leveling crew, whatever it is, and it's a huge expense. And we've brought out 3 different companies who have 3 different ideas, 3 different measurements. Somehow, I would think measuring things would be the simplest, most concrete, agreed upon thing that 3 different entities could do. And you would think there'd be some sort of here's the solution, but somehow there's 3 different ideas, 3 different they're worlds apart too. So like that feeling of helplessness on our part, like we don't know, we can't measure, we have no idea what this remedy is, we don't have the tools, we have nothing. So like with I think kind of with what you're saying, part of this is what do we have control over? And yeah, we do control where we move in a sense. We do kind of control where we choose to move, I guess. But there's also just looming things that kind of hang over us, like debt. We have a lot of debt, or looming things like rent, increased expenses. And now all of a sudden we have this huge new expense coming in that's really kind of not settled, like our house. And so that weight, like it weighs down and you feel it. And it's like my wife and I have talked about this, and it's like you just like it feels like we're just suffocating in it, you know? So even though we have a safe home, safe neighborhood, we love our house. Along with that comes this like, oh my God, it's very, I don't know the right word. It's very weighted, very a lot of pressure. But there's kind of like a shutdown. It's like a shutdown immobilization kind of in there, you know, along with the stress of the situation. And oh my God, are we going to be able to take this debt on and deal with all this stuff?
Yeah, I also have a situation with leveling. And
in your new home?
Yeah, because I'm literally on the dirt, right? I'm in the woods, so that's not level. And so these RVs have a leveling system. So I hired a guy to come out and set up my RV. First of all, he comes without the right tools right off the top. He leaves telling me my RV's 2 inches off, and I feel it. My cupboards feel it, my refrigerator, I feel it. And so here I was. I trusted a guy who we kind of connected because of a life situation that he has experienced. And so we kind of connected with that. So I did not check my discernment, and I trusted him to do his job right. Right? And so now, and I know you can identify with this, now I'm trying to make the phone calls to deal with other people who I am randomly trusting to come out and fix it. Like, I don't know if what they're telling me is true. I don't know if they're going to actually fix it or if they're just going to come out and putter around and then charge me $500, which is in my mind, that's what I think they're going to take advantage of me, right? So I literally am stuck in it. Like, it has to be done, but until I feel confident that I have the right questions, then I can't move forward with it. And I've even got, like, I am not a Facebook person at all, but I have gone on the Facebook groups that are stationary RV living and asked all these questions. And again, I'm getting a variety of input. So it's like so freaking overwhelming. Yeah. So there's that. And then trying to move toward the feeling of being safe and being in my home in a place that is mine, by being overly motivated to get it done.